Hello. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? First off, it's tough to follow. I really thought Fish's talk was amazing. I took a lot of notes and can't wait to check out that book that you mentioned as well. And thanks to Arena Tech Night for inviting me out. Made the trek from Buffalo today, and I leave tonight. In and out. But I love it. I'd love to tell you a little bit about what I've done and hopefully inspire you a little bit to maybe do something on your own. So I'm a developer by trade. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my background, just so you know where I'm coming from. I went to State University of New York in Buffalo, where I studied computer science. Actually didn't finish, partied a little too much, and school just wasn't for me. So I joined the Air Force, and I was a computer programmer in the Air Force. This was back, I'm going to totally date myself by literally using dates. This was 94 to 98, I was in the Air Force. And so I started out as a sysadmin and then started working at Power Builder. Sort of Power Builder. Totally dating myself there. But, you know, I didn't realize this until I was kind of putting the talk together, because I talk about side projects a lot. You're going to hear that. I kind of had a side project when I was in the Air Force, taught myself web development. I made my first web page in December of '95. I really wish I still had it. I can remember parts of it. It had a Sisters of Mercy logo and Smashing Pumpkins and blinking text probably. But it helped me to then take over the website for my division. And then I always knew I was going to, move home after my 4 years. So about a year or so before, I started looking at technologies and what I might want to, what I could maybe get a job in, and it was ASP, now called Classic ASP. And so I taught myself ASP. I made myself a fantasy hockey league website, which is great if you have like a purpose to do something. It's the best way to learn something. Showed it to some people, and then got onto a different project at the Air Force where I was doing ASP, full time, which was great. So it was just my last year. Went home, worked for a company as a developer, moved up to a project manager. Actually brought the BuffaloNews.com online, which is one of my most proud projects I've done, because I used to read it every day. They've changed it since, and now I go back. I'm actually back to the physical paper. I think it's because I'm old too. And then I was only there for a couple years. Friends, actually my former bosses and coworkers from the Air Force, took the code, I don't know how they did this, and started a company. And so they offered me a job, and it was the code I used to work on. So I telecommuted for a year above a quaint little 5 and dime in Buffalo, Vidlers. Anyone heard of Vidlers? I know maybe one person. And it was great, although it scared me from hiring remote workers, because we worked the craziest hours. We'd go golfing, and then we'd work until 4 in the morning. If you're a developer, you probably worked until 4 in the morning before. So actually only lasted at Internology about a year, because too many people just started asking. I had pulled away a friend from ACG, so we both telecommuted. And too many people wanted us to work on other projects, so we started Clever Method. It was Matt and myself in fall of 2000. We added another partner, and we grew steadily over the 10 years that I was there to 34 people. We did a lot of great work for big clients like Fisher-Price, Mattel, and Rich Products, Bird's Eye Foods, things like that. While I was at Clever Method, I always had ideas. I've always had a lot of ideas, and I emailed myself some ideas. So one time, I was watching a video interview of Blake McCoskey of Tom's. Anyone familiar with Tom's? So I heard him describe what Tom's, the buy one, give one model, and I thought, well, I could do that with t-shirts. I always said a thing, had an idea. I'm green, so I used the CFL for the idea. And had the idea that I could do the same thing with t-shirts, buy one, give one t-shirt company that I called You and Who. And so I'm going to talk about this more later, but I had this idea in November of 2009. It brought it to my partners, didn't really go anywhere. We talked about maybe doing it, could tell they just weren't into it. And finally, at one point, it just kept gnawing at me that I really wanted to do this. At the time, I was on a couple different boards, like March of Dimes and American Cancer Society, just trying to give back. What I loved about the idea of Tom's and what could be You and Who was to do that in your day job. Like every single sale resulted in helping someone. So finally, when JetBlue had a promotion called All You Can Jet. This was in 2010, September. They had done it the previous year, 2009, and it was unlimited travel for a full month. And my friend did it. He had a project he called 12 Hours in a City, where he literally didn't spend more than that, and he flew around the whole month. Got a lot of press about it. He was on, like, you know, the Good Morning America and everything. And I thought, well, now they're doing it again. This is a great opportunity to launch You and Who. So with really nothing started, I went to my partners and said, guys, I got to leave and do this. And so why I wanted to do that, too, was because I didn't want to just be a Buffalo shirt company. There's a lot of those. I feel like per capita we have the most shirt companies. I don't know how you guys are in Columbus. Cleveland's up there. New Orleans is the only one that I've found that rivals Buffalo. I've since found out I think it's like a pride thing or an underdog type of mentality. But we launched in 8 cities when we launched. And so what we did is we found artists in each city to design the shirts. And every time we sold the shirt, we would donate it to a homeless shelter or shelter that helped victims of domestic violence or runaway or at-risk youth. So we would donate back to the community. And that was You and Who. So I'm going to hit play because this is really long. So the year after I launched, JetBlue, I'm a big fan, had another promotion that this year they called Blue Pass. It was unlimited travel in and out of Boston for 3 months for $2,000. So the trick was you had to fly in and out of Boston. So I put together this itinerary called 30 Cities in 90 Days because we traveled to 30 cities in 90 days. Clever name, right? So literally it took me a while to figure this out, but I would have to go from Buffalo to Boston, somewhere else, back to Boston. I went home like every weekend. But I did it. We traveled. I visited all these cities. I had recruited my now fiance to be You and Who's director of communications. She was doing everything she could to get some press. We did get some good hits, Miami Herald and a couple TV stations. What I did is I was visiting the shelters that we would donate to. We donated to, at the peak, about 89 different shelters across the United States. Met with artists, tried to find stores to maybe carry our shirts. But really, it was an eye-opening experience. Like, it was very humbling to visit all these places, you know, see the people that are helping people that I wanted to help on a daily basis. We just would send them free shirts. And it's really changed my whole perspective on everything. It's hard to, you know, really complain. Like, even any of your worst days is someone else's best day, right? We're not done yet, so I'm probably not going to let it go. But I traveled around a lot. Actually, not just JetBlue. I took some buses too. Took a bus to like Burlington. I drove. I don't think there were any boats involved, but I took most methods of transportation. Yeah. So right at the end of 30 Cities, 90 Days, there's an ad agency in Buffalo. It's a great ad agency called Crowley Webb. Anyone ever heard of Crowley Webb? Anyone? I'm just kidding. It's actually Ben Pappalardo's father owns the agency, Small World. Anyways, it was their 25-year anniversary. They said they knew it meant to be a startup. They wanted to help a startup, and they came up with this concept of the 25-hour workday. So their whole company worked for 25 straight hours on a startup. And so they did a voting contest through Facebook. So I took advantage of my developer skills, and I made a Facebook app that made it really easy to vote for us, and we ended up winning. I had spent 2 days in a hotel during that trip. Of course, it happened to be in Puerto Rico, too. But, you know, I got it done, and we won. And so you don't have to hear me talk for 30 minutes straight, I have a couple of videos, and here's the first one. So the following year, I decided, especially since I traveled all those cities and we helped people, we expanded into 7 new cities. We're up to 40 cities now. And in April of 2014, it was the largest, it was a factory collapsed. It was the biggest, in the garment industry, it was the biggest catastrophe that ever happened. Like 1,100 people died. And I said, you know what, like our shirts should be made in the U.S. if we're helping people in the U.S. At the time, Dove Charney still owned American Apparel, if you know him. He's a douchebag. And so I didn't want to use American Apparel. So I said, well, screw it, we'll make our own shirts. And so I had no idea how to do that. So I Googled, I just literally figured it out. And actually, I made phone calls, and one of the best things that happened was I talked to some guy who was completely the wrong guy, but he was really nice, and he pointed me in the exact direction. We found cotton that we sourced in North Carolina. I visited a cut and sew factory in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is about 6 hours from Buffalo. Family-run, cut and sew factory. Came up with a pattern, and we decided we'd launch an Indiegogo campaign. We went with Indiegogo because I like to joke we were too good for Kickstarter. Because of the donation aspect, they don't allow any donations on their perks. And they're like, well, you can do it if you just don't talk about the donation at all. I'm like, well, that's the whole company, right? So we went with Indiegogo. We had a $25,000 campaign. We raised $25,081. So we just made it. I remember I timed it to launch in early November so that everyone would have their shirts by Christmas. And then 10 months later, we actually finished the shirts. Just didn't think it was going to take that long, right? You'd think it's just a shirt. But we did have our custom pattern, and by the time you go back and forth and test it, and honestly, it just takes longer than you might think. But it's one of those things that turns out to kind of be a blessing in disguise, too. During that time, so we switched. We were selling only American-made shirts, not ours yet, not American Apparel, so it was kind of a hassle. An order would come in, and I'd be like, I know I got to get one shirt from this place. Not a good position to be in when you own a shirt company where you don't like selling shirts. So a friend of mine had helped me with the Indiegogo campaign. He runs a very large Bills backers group in Buffalo called the Bills Mafia. And so we did a shirt through the Indiegogo campaign, and then right after that, he had this idea that he wanted to, actually what it was a friend of his was doing a fundraiser, and he was like, well, maybe I could sell a shirt and raise funds for this, his daughter that needed help. And I reached out to him and said, well, who's going to print those shirts? And he had no idea. So I'm like, well, we can print them. We had bought our own digital direct-to-garment printer. Huge mistake, right? But we bought it because at the peak of You and Who, we had 105 designs. So we couldn't stock all that, so we would print on demand. And it just never worked right. I'm not a shirt printer, right? So, but at the time, I was like, well, we can print them. If it's one, you might sell 12, we can sell them. If not, we'll use the screen printer down the hall from us. And so we started selling 26 shirts was the name of this line that Dell had come up with. It was called that because it was a new shirt every 2 weeks. So in a year, there's 26. And it launched in November of 2013, like a month after the campaign. And that was all we really focused on until the shirts, the Made in America shirts, got done. But like I said, this is one of those like window closing, door opening, or whatever it is sayings, right? Because 26 shirts actually turned out to be a way better model than You and Who. And it was a great lesson as a founder that I had to be willing to pivot a little bit. I had to let go of my ego that this idea was better. And so what's better because we take orders for 2 weeks and then we print what's sold, we have no inventory. So I didn't have to have a printer, I didn't have to have shelves full of blank shirts. We sold 20 shirts, we sold 800 shirts, it didn't matter. We could offer lots of styles, it was just a really great thing. Turns out too, sports shirts sell better than just cool t-shirts. I felt like this was safe to wear. It's Pittsburgh. Mario Lemieux only played against Columbus twice. They won and lost, and had 0 points, and it was a -3. So nothing against Mario. This is obviously, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we've expanded, and this is from our 26 shirts, Pittsburgh. So sports shirts do a little bit better than just cool t-shirts. And then we donate now $8 from every shirt sold directly to a family in need, occasionally to a foundation, but we really like doing it to families. We really found that the impact of that is just greater than the donated shirts. The shelters would love getting the brand new shirts that we send, and we would send the same exact shirt. Like quality people would ask, like, would you send a lesser shirt. It's like, no, we want to send them a cool shirt with a great shirt with a cool t-shirt, design. But as much as they liked it, it didn't like change their lives, right? The top donation we made to one family, it was this girl who's battling cancer. We donated $17,000 to her. I mean, that was life-changing. Like, we literally paid their mortgage for a year, And it's funny because it doesn't happen a lot, but it was one of the ones where I got to hand her the check myself, and it was just a great moment. So we did put together another video.
Hi, I'm Cardinal, and my dad has, what is it? I know it's like in a Helios or something. One day, when I was in the hospital with my dad visiting, I was hearing my mom and dad talk, and then they said, a transport, and I was in my brain, I was what the heck is that? And then they told me about it, and I was shocked. It's been really confused. When Dad's home, it usually gets better because he can help with Mom and us.
Half the time I watch this, I cry too. So I'm just a sap, as you talk about crying a lot. But it's why we do what we do. It's such a great feeling. We've worked with a lot of great athletes in Buffalo. We're trying to do this in more of the other cities, but it's been a little tougher. It's Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas. John Tavares is a really well-known lacrosse player. Jack Eichel, Matt Molson, and then Rick Jenneret and Rob Ray, who are the announcers. So this has been a lot of fun. The Thurman was at his house. We got to take pictures of him at his house. So Dell, who I mentioned previously, who had the idea, for the first year and a half that he was involved in this, he just was doing it on the side. He had a job as a sysadmin at a state organization, and right around, actually, I mentioned the timeline a little bit. November 13 is when this launched. January 14, I decided I had to join. My fiance had started a marketing communications company. It was doing well. I was struggling to get by with this. As much as we were doing good, it was just margins not really there. So I joined 19 Ideas, leading the development team. And so for a stretch there, it was just our side project. Dell had a full-time job, I had a full-time job. We might take it off to go to Thurman's house to take pictures, because who's going to say no to that? One thing I want to point out, it's a little bit higher than that. It's 900 something. I estimated poorly, and we had a slight spreadsheet error. I thought we would be over 250 at this point, so we're pretty darn close. We're going to get there soon, $8 at a time. I mentioned the big one was the $17,000. Blue for Ben was another thing. There was a kid who was going. The story is that we see her just so tough. This kid is 3 years old, battling cancer. His mother blogged about it. The whole community got behind it. Literally, everything was blue for Ben. Yeah. He was buried in the shirt we did for him. All right, moving on. So I joined 19 Ideas full-time in January 2014. We went from 4 to 8 people in 1 year, 8 to 13 the next. We're at 17 people now. We've had a lot of growth. But what I've learned, I mentioned it already, right? Startups, you have to be able to pivot. So we've completely pivoted. You and Who is now basically 26 shirts. It just worked better, as I mentioned, for all those reasons. And one of the best parts, though, I learned about manufacturing. The Made in America shirts we did were $6 more per shirt, so times 2, because I was giving them away, it was 12. It just didn't work. People just didn't want to do it. So sadly, these are not made in America. We do now offer that as an option for an upcharge, and that seems to work, because if you want to put your money where your mouth is, you can pay the extra, but trying to force everyone to do it, I found just didn't work, unfortunately. But the thing I learned the most, and this is what I want to talk about, because I think what's great about side projects, like I'm constantly working, like today I took the Greyhound bus here actually, and I was working on lots of stuff. And some of the things are I'm constantly trying to sell more shirts. Be it Facebook ads, we're in the process of setting up buyable pins. We do obviously a lot of email marketing, conversions, right? That's the key. And I'm always trying new stuff, learning, doing A/B testing, and then I take that learning and I pass it on to my clients at Night to Ideas. So I would encourage everyone to come up with, a startup. Out of order here. I'd encourage everyone to come up with their own little side project. I think the best case could be, I look back now, when I had this idea at Clever Method, we totally could have done this as a side project of Clever Method. We had all the tools we needed to do that as an agency, right? And the goodwill that we've gotten, like I totally believe in karma, right? And all the goodwill that we've been doing, it's coming back. It's not why I'm doing it, but it would have been a great thing to do. And I look at the 25-hour workday that Crawley Web did for us. You can do that yourselves if you have an agency. Maybe don't do it for 25 straight hours. You can if you want. I think some of the best ideas probably did come out at like 3 a.m. But maybe just get together, brainstorm an idea, come up with everything you need to do that, and then launch it. And it doesn't need to be an agency. It could be just you. I talked to someone earlier at lunch. I was like, come up with an idea. Or when we had dinner. Just come up with some idea and do it. I encourage you to have some sort of social good component to it. Hopefully not T-shirts, just because there's not a lot of those out there. But it could be anything. It could be you could sell something else. It could be an event. I love to see that. I heard that they donate from this. It could be an event like that, and anything like that to do. But like I said, I think the point is kind of like when I look back at that fantasy hockey site too. You kind of have to have the reason to do stuff sometimes. But like what you get out of that can sometimes be so great. I mentioned a little bit about Dell, and it was our side project. We ended up getting laid off from that project, from that company, unexpectedly. It's his dream job was to sell T-shirts that help people for a living, but he never would have taken that risk to do that. But when he was forced to kind of think about it, we made it work, and now I brought him on as a partner, and he's a full-time employee. And we just hired another full-time employee, which is great. Especially as a startup, when you go from 1 to 2, that's actually huge. Like we doubled our capacity, because that's kind of the trouble when you're in a startup. You're on this hamster wheel, where we sell 800 shirts, great. Now Dell's going to ship shirts for 3 days and not do anything else. So adding someone onto the team really helped. But I brought risk up there because I gave this talk actually a week ago. People asked questions, and I think I might have like a default where I just don't even think about risk. It just doesn't come up. Partly why I think of that is this phrase. I made a talk at a TEDx Youth Buffalo. It was kind of geared towards kids, but it really applies to everything. And you can apply this to everything you do. It's not win or lose, it's win or learn. So if you think of things like that, then there's no losing, then there's no risk, right? So just go for it. Just do it, and you're going to learn. And that goes down to like an email you send out or a tweet, right? You're going to learn from it, you're going to improve, you're going to do better. You're going to constantly be doing that. But it also just can go to a new company. Now, I will say one thing that I didn't do was, I had ramp up here. The other mistake that I learned was I started from 0 with You and Who when I left my old company. Don't do that. If you have a job and you have some idea that's your side project, stay on that as long as you can till you get to the point where maybe you can jump and do that full time. And that's where like bootstrapping comes in a little bit. But again, I just got to keep talking about side projects. It's funny, how things like this happen, but I subscribe to Fred Wilson's blog. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And there was a Medium post that I saw recently talking about side projects. They were both talking about how they're good to have. And I really believe in that. Like I said, it could be yours on the side after hours. It could be a thing you get together as a company to do. And that's it. Questions? Where'd beer go? Scott. Thanks. Yeah. Well, I will say one of the things I did learn is that the barrier to entry is lower than you might think, right? As I'm a developer, honestly, we didn't do a ton of e-commerce at Clever Method before I left. So when I launched in September of 2010, I did it on Big Cartel, which now they've improved their game a little bit, but Shopify has kind of gone above. Anyone here with no experience developing could start selling something tonight on Shopify. It's just super easy to do, you know? And honestly, sometimes it's the good way to do it, to validate the idea, right? Like, don't do all the work. Like, see if people want the thing you're going to try to sell. But the point is the barrier to entry to do that is kind of low. Now, when it got to the point where I felt like I needed to, I was able to roll up my sleeves, and I did code the site myself in Magento. I mean, because I'm a developer, I was able to do that. But honestly, I'll echo what Fish was saying earlier too, right? Because I tell people a lot in the startup community. I mentioned I love startup weekends. I drove here to mentor one. I won one at home. I've organized 5 of them. And I tell people that ideas are worth nothing. It's all about the execution, right? Because people get afraid to tell their idea or whatever, and that's just ludicrous, right? But what I have learned, and partly through you and who is a good example, we had a good idea, and through mostly the 25-hour workday, we had a great execution. Like, it looked the part of being a national brand, and it worked well. We had great designs, but if no one knows about it, it just didn't matter. And that was our trouble. So I will say, you know, I tell people it takes either time, money, or luck. And we've been on the time path, right? We haven't had any money, really. We had some luck. The 25-hour workday is luck. We've worked with some great athletes. We haven't had the one yet that's like, I don't know, Vince Vaughn in a Blackhawks shirt or someone famous like that it could really take off, but it might happen. I mean, we have had some home runs, that we would call them, in the shirts. But what we want to do, it's a very repeatable thing. We want to do this in all 30 of the NFL areas, metros, because we find people we just launched in Cincinnati, I should mention. We're in Chicago, Pittsburgh, and now Cincinnati, in addition to Buffalo. We find Cincinnati artists to design shirts about Cincinnati sports. We'll find a Cincinnati person to help, or foundation. And so it's kind of a local thing. And so we can do that in a lot of cities. And we have very attainable numbers we're trying to hit, that I think we can do that across the area. And that's where that money comes in, because we don't have enough of the resources. But slowly we'll expand, and we'll do this in more cities. So I don't know if I really answered your question, other than, like I said, to kind of echo, it's marketing. It's just getting the word out there. And it's hard. And honestly, it's another area where the social good aspect of it, people just want to share it. So like, that helps, right? If we were just selling t-shirts, it'd be that much harder. You know. Any questions? Yeah. Good.
As a developer / entrepreneur, how much time do you actually spend developing versus like, traveling, communicating, selling?
Yeah. Well, that's another great benefit to me for 26 Shirts now too, is because leading the development team at Nights Ideas, I don't write any code anymore for clients. So I do, though, for my side project. So that's a lot of fun, because I still get to write code and try things and learn. At this point, now, I don't do as much traveling for that. I did in the beginning, partly because I didn't have the money, and I had to do it, you know, kind of almost, not say guerrilla, but like, I had to do things like travel to 30 cities in 90 days to try to get noticed. So normally you might not have to do that as much, but we have now had opportunities where, you know, Dell had to go to Cincinnati for the launch. Like, it just makes sense to do that. That's where we just need more people to really grow like we need to, because you do kind of have to be on the ground at times. That's the hardest thing. It's been way harder than I think we thought to get where we wanted to in the other cities. Like, Buffalo dwarfs what we sell in Chicago, even though the population is, you know, just going to take time. So, to me, you know, it's a lot of coding actually that I do, just because I'm constantly trying new stuff. But that's what I love about it, you know, because I'll go through the whole. I don't know if anyone's done Bible pins, but it's a little bit of a process. And now I've gone through that. And when the client that wants it through 90 Ideas, I can say, oh yeah, I know exactly how to do that, you know. So that's what's been great for it, is this learning experience. That's why I try to, like, I think anyone can benefit from that. So you're saying like with 26 shirts, like how do I? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's a good question in that I mentioned to someone that I'm actually going to go to Chicago in June. We're going to try to do the open call for Shark Tank. And I've been talking to some friends, and it was good. They were beating me up a little bit because they're like, what are you doing that's not, they're going to, it was good. It was what Mark Cuban's going to say to me. Is like, you sell t-shirts. Like, you don't have the market cornered on that. So part of it is just process, right? So we're trying to get a great process. We do the fulfillment. We've ironed out all the kinks. We're actually working with a Toronto screen printer to help on the Toronto market because it's hard to do it over the border. So we'll have that answered. Honestly, a little bit of our special sauce is the players. The more that we've gotten the players, like now that we've got a handful of Hall of Famers in Buffalo, like we have a new player and we're like, hey, we're doing a shirt about you. Do you want to model it? Like, it's hard to say no when all these other great players have done it. So that helps because we get a lot of the players on board. So those are some of the differentiating factors. In terms of like why someone buys a shirt, we kind of have, it's nice for that too, because we'll have people that, if you liked Mario Lemieux, like, you're likely to buy this shirt. And what's great about that is I had some very targeted Facebook ads to people that like Mario Lemieux. But also what helped with this the most was we worked with the Mario Lemieux Foundation. It's kind of how we were able to get away with using his name and things like that. And they pushed it out, and they have a great audience, and so that helps. So one of the things we found is it helps to work with foundations early in the city because they have the reach. But like I said, ideally, we'd like to go direct to a family because they just feel the impact's greater. But you might just like the design, or we've had some, like that Blue for Ben, for example. It was a good shirt, and it was about Andre Reed, and he was getting in the Hall of Fame, and he was behind it. But most people are just buying it because they wanted to help Ben. And so it's kind of like you get people from both sides, right? They just like the shirt. They don't care what it looks like. They're just going to buy it because it helps the person. Or sometimes I feel like, especially in the newer cities, they don't even know we're donating it. They just want the shirt. But they find out later, and we do a great job with customer service, and the quality is, really great. So we're trying to get them to get on board for like future shirts, things like that. Any questions?
Why t-shirts?
So I don't know. I always had this thing about T-shirts, right? Like I don't know. Some of you probably have a collection of T-shirts, and similarly, like Dell, partly why he came up with the idea for 26 shirts. He was like a shirt fanatic. Like he's got so many shirts, it's ridiculous. And that was the thing. So we just had this thing about shirts and being able to kind of show. I will say it now. I've analyzed everyone's shirt in here. I can't help it. I just walk down the street and I see what you're wearing, and I'm trying to figure out why you're wearing it. And I have kind of figured out that, as I mentioned a little bit before, pride is the thing. It's you're either repping your school or a team or band, things like that mostly. I mean, granted, sometimes it's just a cool shirt or company. Sometimes it's just a goofy shirt. But most of the time, it's like you kind of want people to see what you're wearing. And so that's, again, where the sports kind of works with that regard. We had 3 themes with you and who, and we figured it out enough that the third one was city pride, so it was about the city. We definitely saw it was different for that. So I think it's just, honestly though, I go back to that original idea. It literally just popped in my head watching him describe Blake describe Tom's shoes. And I was like, oh, T-shirts, I could do this with T-shirts. So I will say to that end too, it's tough with shirts. If you're going to do this, shoes are great because like there's this perceived value of shoes. You'll pay $80 for a pair of shoes. The Tom shoes that they sell probably cost less than the shirts we make, so their margin is tremendous and they're doing really well. We like barely scrape by. We have really good shirts, and with the $8 donation, we give $1 to the artist who designed it. To answer your question, we kind of we don't just accept any designs. We typically work with, we'll reach out to them through like Dribbble, great resource to find great designers. Or sometimes they'll submit it to us. But it's tight. It's super tight margin with shirts. Time for maybe a couple more questions?
How many ideas have you shelved versus?
19 ideas. No. Well, versus pursuing.
Right.
Um,
And how long does it take you to make that decision?
well, this is where again I've learned from going through this, and I'll go back to what Fish talked about. The validation of it is key, right? You'd start with an idea and do whatever you can with the least amount of effort to figure out if people want it. You know what I mean? Which, like, if you've ever heard of Noah Kagan, who runs like Sumo Me and AppSumo, and both great things. If you don't know him, check it out. He does this. He'll have a course where he gave an example where he sold beef jerky, and he put out like Craigslist ads. I can't remember because he did this twice. He did like Craigslist ads to see if there's an interest. And then, so that's, I think, the point is a better way to do it. Mine, honestly, I think what it was all the ideas that I had, because I subscribed to being able to talk to them. It resonated with everyone with the you and who when I was telling people back in 2009, 10, where I finally was like, this is the one. Like, this is the one that could really do it. And then the more I thought about it is why I was just like, screw it, guys. If you're not going to do it, I'm just going to go off on my own and do it. So, one last question. What's that? For the shirt business? Well, I have two businesses. That's my side project. But it's mostly what we talked about, so it's fine. Like I said, we just want to keep expanding to more cities. We know that there's a lot of people out there that we can help by doing that. And again, I joked with someone, like, if we do go on Shark Tank, I'll take any money they give us because I'm not running 26 shirts to buy a Lamborghini, right? I'm just trying to help more. I want to have a successful company that can employ enough people to keep it going and get by and be able to donate. Obviously, like, I look forward to the year where we donate $1 million in a year, right? Just because that would be fun. So that's done through some slow growth to new cities. And that's the thing, is it's actually very attainable with the numbers that we're